This is Dan Schneider on this Dan Schneider video interview. The subject is World of Creatives. It's a website and a YouTube channel run by Dwayne Walker, and the conversation will begin in a moment. World of Creatives is a website and a YouTube channel run by Dwayne Walker. He is my guest. As I like to usually do, I want my guests to sort of define who they are, what they do, and why. So, Dwayne, if you could take a few minutes, tell me about where you're from, who you are, and anything else of note.
Yeah, so for sure. So my name is Dwayne Walker. I'm definitely a creator um, who since childhood has been focused on the arts, from drawing, painting to music and saxophone and piano, and my entire life has been focused around creativity, bleeding into entrepreneurship, and recently have been focused on writing and also video. So I wrote a book called Create or Die 4 years ago. I started that journey and did deep dives into the creative process of hundreds of creative geniuses and countless research studies on creativity. And I bundled my notes into different insights and shared them in a book. And that brought me on a journey of constantly obsessing over creativity every single day, and sharing my notes with my audience on the World of Creatives newsletter. And recently started a YouTube channel that has been gaining a lot of traction in the creative space, where I would just take insights from my notes and share them with the creative community.
So, where did you grow up, and did you grow up in a creative family? You mentioned music, basically. That's seemingly your primary art form. Did you come from a family of musicians, or did you have a father who was a poet, a mother who was a painter?
Yeah, it's a great question. So my primary medium is has been painting and drawing my whole life. I did piano and saxophone growing up, but it was mainly for like a year or two. My parents, my mom was a poet, but she, in her free time, she was a poet. My dad was a chef in his free time, but he was also an engineer. And then my mom was in the medical field. When I was a kid, I was homeschooled a lot. And so for many years, like I spent all my days in a science lab that my dad built in my basement, and the nights in my bedroom just painting and drawing. But when I was a kid, my dad got injured on his job, and he was bedridden for a very long time and hasn't been able to work since. When that happened, it took a toll on my mom and my family, and uh, and it sent me into, I guess you could say, like a early depression as a kid. I was literally like 8 or 9 years old. And that's when I leaned into art more than ever before. I didn't know that that what was happening was therapy, but it was. And so I spent majority of my time creating art, and it helped me navigate the landscape of my emotions as a kid. And eventually, I sold my first drawing in eighth grade, and that's when I saw like, whoa, like this could actually make money. It was $100, and then I won an art contest for another $100 in eighth grade, and that sent me down the rabbit hole of art competitions, and so it led me to winning over 50 art contests in high school. One where I was granted a trip to Italy without my parents, just went there for weeks, studied under certain artists, explored the art scene out there, and expanded my view as to what art touches. And I realized that art is the books that's behind you, the chair that you're sitting in, the technology that was built for us to have this conversation right now. And when I got back, I realized that I wanted to expand my art beyond the paint to canvas, and I wanted to uh, paint the world. I wanted to change the world through my creations. And so I thought back on my life, maybe something that I don't talk about this much on World of Creatives channel. I try to stay away from my life and kind of focus more on the creator's history life. But I actually started an online art education platform straight out of high school, into college, early into college. That platform has taught over 60,000 kids in over 100 countries. And it's called Sparketh. It was also on Shark Tank. Not sure if you're familiar with that show, but I
I've
was
heard of
also
it. Yeah.
yeah, I was also on Shark Tank
Oh.
for that platform. So entrepreneurship has been really big in my life as well. So because I view it through the lens of creativity, and so that's just like little bits and pieces of my journey as like an artist into now, and I still create paintings and drawings. I 2 years ago I proposed to my wife with an entire art show. I created 10 6-foot paintings, each different art styles, telling the entire story of our relationship. Uh, um, and yeah, so I still create art, but it's usually for loved ones.
So it's interesting. I was going to get into some of this later when we talk about the videos, but I might as well get into it now and then go back and expand a little bit on your life story. But one of the things that I've always found sort of roiling, let's say, is that when people conflate other things outside of art with art. For example, you mentioned in one of your videos, you mentioned people like Bill Gates and Nikola Tesla. Uh, and to me, art is true creativity. The other stuff is more cleverness. For example, Elon Musk, people act as though he's some great scientist. Yet, if you listen to him on talk about science stuff, he clearly doesn't understand science. He doesn't understand basic physics. He doesn't understand a lot of things that someone who is building rockets, presumably to go to Mars, would. And yeah, you could maybe argue he's a good businessman. Same thing with Bill Gates. But anyone who even has a limited background knowledge of Bill Gates knows that basically he stole the code for Windows from another an employee of his, or a coworker at the time. And so, to me, this isn't creativity as much as it is cleverness. Same thing with someone like a Donald Trump. I can't stand Donald Trump, and I don't think he's a particularly intelligent person, but he's clever in how he manipulates people. And so, uh, do you see a divide between the idea of creativity in, say, a Michelangelo, or some great jazz trumpeter, or some great painter, and businessmen like a Musk, or another one was Nikola Tesla. For all the hype that Nikola Tesla has gotten in the last 150 years, the truth is that the vast majority of his machines were junk science. So let me just ask you about that. I would contend art is the ultimate in creative pursuit, and these other things can use some creativity. I think science uses creativity in service of discovery, and art uses discovery in service of creativity. Anyway, go ahead if you.
Oh yeah, I love that point for sure. And I think that I see exactly where you're going. I feel like I should start with the first couple of chapters in my book is all about, it says it's about creativity, and it is, but it's really about mindset.
Mm.
Um, and so I talk about things like the key of questions is just like all about questioning your assumptions and things like that. And what I realized about creativity is that in a lot of ways it's a way of thinking. Uh, when I was a kid, when I broke out of the frame of, okay, art is all things creative, I started to notice that creativity is simply bringing your ideas to life. That's the way that I view creativity. I view creativity as there's an idea in my head about anything. This could be a painting, this could be a glimmer of an idea for a song or a poem, and I sit down and I act as a vessel to bring that idea to life. And so when I look at people like Elon Musk or Bill Gates, or I don't even have to touch on names like that. I could just talk about entrepreneurs just in my circle.
Mhm.
Uh, it's to me, it's undeniable when I dig into their process of their specific craft, of bringing their specific ideas to life, that it involves a way of thinking that's not typical. It's out of the norm. It's something that the average person, or let me not say the average person, it's just the I would say the person outside of their craft just doesn't isn't thinking in those ways. And I feel like it is creative thinking, especially when they're pinned against other entrepreneurs, and you look at it through the lens of, okay, these entrepreneurs are thinking of this problem in this way, and then someone thinks of the problem in a more creative way. And so I also think that it's very difficult to uh, this is something that I struggle with sometimes accepting, but uh, but when I look at people like Elon Musk, like you mentioned, um, he talks about astrophysics and things like that, and you could tell that he doesn't know much. That he's just worked with a team of
Mm.
very intelligent people to bring his ideas to life.
He's a chameleon.
Yes, yes, yes. So I look at that, and unfortunately I hear parallels in the lives of so many other artists and musicians who like for example, some of the biggest artists, most successful living artists today have teams of artists that's working under them, that's putting the actual paint on the canvases
Yeah.
to bring the ideas to life. And that initially that disturbed me, because I was like, how are you, how are you claiming to be creative if you're not even putting the paint on the canvas? Uh, but then you have uh, directors who is really a team of people that put that film together, but their name is attached to it, or a singer who, when you look at their discography, you could tell that, then you see that it's a long list of writers and a long list of producers and a long list of team that brought that vision to life. And I realized that a aspect, I mean, uh, aspect of creativity is being playing the role of the visionary, and that's okay that it's okay to play that role of the visionary if what you're doing is still orchestrating. So your
The
tool
guiding
set,
force.
exactly, your tool set is no longer paint, canvases, or tools or technology. It's people. It's the minds of people that you're orchestrating and you're painting with.
So, in just a sort of tangent to that, if you were, say, a master carpenter and you were, hired to build some, whatever it is, some grand piece of furniture, you were to build a room, and they want the Dwayne Walker carpentry vision. To me, that's great, and I admire craftsmen, but I put craftsmen in a different light than I do artists for a simple reason. There's utility. If you're making a desk drawers or a bed frame, there's a purpose, there's a reason to do that. But if you are creating a song, if you are writing a poem, if you are, name any other art form, even if you're gonna decide whether to kick your leg leftward or rightward in a ballet solo or something, that is something that, in a sense, there is no grand purpose for it. One of the ironies, I think, is that art, and most people live their lives free of art. Yes, they'll listen to music here or there on streaming or whatnot, but art is not essential in the same way as having a warm bed to sleep on. But because it isn't, that's what makes it all the more valuable. Because it's that cherry on top. It's that thing that you strive for in life. That a set of a well built desk isn't going to give you the same thrill as looking at a great painting or watching a great film. What would you think to that?
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting, because I think that art lives in a space where someone can sit and look at it from one angle and say that there's no purpose for it. It's here for decoration. It's here for to just make a space look nice. It's here to just, you know, express yourself. But then on the other hand, someone can look at art and say, this piece spoke to me to the point where it completely changed the trajectory of my life. Now, when you look at it like that, one piece of art can completely change the trajectory of multiple people's lives, meaning that one piece of art can influence somebody to the point where the the reality that we live in completely changes trajectory. So I feel like a chair, while you can sit in it and it can feel nice, or a bed you could lay in and you could feel comfortable and go to sleep, I actually believe that a work of art created with the intention, I mean, not the intention, but created um, in a way where it moves people. No, it doesn't have, uh, tangible uh, purpose, but it has a purpose that can often be unseen but felt as, uh, and probably won't even be seen unless you have a bird's eye view of how it's emotionally connected uh, to people, essentially.
Well, to me, there's a difference there. Uh, a great work of art can be great, but it's not necessarily going to immediately move me. I think people too often mistake emotional power for excellence within the art. I don't know. Do you mind if I ask just? And
Yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
going to give you an example. How old are you right now?
31,
Okay, I
31.
figured
Yeah.
you're around 30. So you're probably a little too young, but in the late 80s, there was a book, and I forget, maybe it was Pat Conroy, a very schmaltzy writer wrote a book called The Bridges of Madison County. And it was what we call a tearjerker. It was a sappy romance kind of thing. Well, there were a lot of films in the 1980s that were called tearjerkers. And people would go to them and they'd weep, and there'd be romantic comedies that where something went awry, but they weren't high art. But people 25, 30 years later will still say that performance by so and so actor touched me so much. So my argument would be that there's value in that if that's something that you still remember 30 years on, but it's not the same value that you would get from, let's say, to use an example used in one of your videos, Michelangelo's David. The Michelangelo's David, you don't have to know a damn thing about it. You're going to be overwhelmed by the presence of this thing. Whereas if you're watching a schmaltzy film with your girlfriend and it's your second or third date, and you're hoping to score points with her, uh, it's at a different level. Yes, it can provide something positive in your life, but it's not going to be like seeing that great work of art where you boom.
Yeah, yeah, no, totally. And I think that, to me, I think that's the beauty of art. There's a duality to it, where it's like, I could create one piece of art and put it in a room of 100 people, and 100 people experience it differently. Majority of people might just walk by it and it's just something in the peripheral. A couple more people might um, walk by and take a glimpse at it, and they don't even notice how it influences their subconscious. And then there's someone, it could be just one out of that 100 people, where that art becomes their favorite piece of art. Those rom-coms that you're talking about, or tear jerkers that you're talking about, um, to you they're just something to go to the movies with a girl, but to somebody else that became their favorite movie. That probably became a movie that completely changed the way that they view relationships, and thus changed the way that they view how they should find a partner, and thus changed who they chose as a partner, and then in turn who they had is who the children that they had. And so I feel like it's more like at that level that I feel like art completely changes the world. Like, that, where they're just like, oh, Earth without art is like, where you just take out the word art from
Yeah.
Earth or whatever. It's like a funny whatever, but I actually think that it has a lot of uh, profound meaning when you really think about it. Without art, there's just blank screens and barely formless chairs, or there's like an energy that's missing, that's hard to touch and put a word on, but we all experience it, and we can all say that we have a sense of it, but there isn't enough research or understanding of our universe to even understand the value of it.
Let me give you a couple of words or terms that you've used, but also that I've used. And the first one is the term genius. And if we were doing this discussion in 1925 instead of 2025, people didn't speak of individuals as geniuses. They would say that so and so has a genius for A, B, or C. And I think one of the things with the society that precipitated that was sort of the celebritization of society. Albert Einstein, for example, is to me the perfect example. There's probably, if you were to Google up famous quotes of people, there's probably no human being in history that has more quotes attributed to him that are false or just totally made up than Albert Einstein. And I say this because Einstein did write some books. He just didn't do E equals MC squared and a few other things. But his most famous book of essays was called Ideas and Opinions, and they were his opinions about life in general, politics and whatnot. And when I read this book 25, 30 years ago, maybe even longer, my first thought was, boy, okay, he was great at math and physics, but he didn't have any greater understanding about society, about human nature and whatnot. So to me, you can say he had a genius for mathematics. You can say this great painter or that great painter had a genius with hand-eye coordination. This filmmaker had a genius for the visuals, etc., etc. Do you agree with that? Because I do recall you opened up, I think, talking about yourself, talking about how many geniuses there are out there. And I would counter that genius is, in 8 billion people, maybe there's a few hundred in certain fields. They aren't that plentiful. And that's why when you meet someone who has that genius, whether it's about a great ballerina or whether it's someone is working on, say, faster than light travel, or the great artist, they're very rare, and that's the thing that makes genius so special.
I think there's different levels of, or different types of, I'd say, geniuses. I think that is there's cultural geniuses where as a culture we can all look at them and say like, wow, like I respect their output to the point where we can agree that they're genius. I also do agree that it's more niches. I don't think I wouldn't say there's just like an overall genius. There's always just like kind of like you're saying, like Albert Einstein. He was a genius and equals MC squared, but maybe in other ways he wasn't. But I wouldn't take the title of genius away because he wasn't uh, socially savvy or something like that. He wasn't a social genius, whatever, um, or artistic genius. So I feel like they're at the society level. There's people who they're the output of their work. We look at it and we say, wow, like that's so groundbreaking. That's so anti what's anti the norm, and this is something that we've never seen as a society before. So where you're probably going to completely disagree with me on is this. um, I actually believe that deep down everybody has their own personal genius, and I think that specifically creative genius, but I think creative genius to me spans across, like I said, bring your ideas to life with whatever your personal uh, passion is, things like that. I feel like everyone has their own personal, and it's lost in translation between when they're born and to now, whether through the suppression of society, the family, the things that they learned, the things that the boxes that they've been forced to be in, and the closer you get to uh, embracing your childhood with your adult brain, then the more that you can discover your own personal genius. When I look at a lot of the creators and scientists and entrepreneurs and uh, that we consider geniuses culturally, when we look at them, and there's so many accounts. I think I saw this more than more than majority of the other things that I saw in terms of connection is that they tapped into their childhood and embraced their childhood to unravel their own genius. Uh, it's almost as if something about embracing your youth, your childhood curiosity, fearlessness of the unknown, and that unlocks something inside of you that allows you to embrace almost like a just an interpersonal genius.
I want to just quote two lines because when you're talking, it reminded me. There's a poem called "The Second Coming" by an Irish poet, William Butler Yeats. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, uh, but the end of it's a two stanza poem. It's about 20 lines long, and the last two lines of the first stanza go: "The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity." And having spent 40 plus years in the arts, two of the saddest things I've seen are the people who don't have any real talent, but goddamn, they want to be artists. They want to be around artists, but they don't just want to host art shows. They want to be the person, the painter, rather than the gallery owner. And on the other hand, there's the person that has the great talent, but they don't have the fortitude to go through and push through criticism. They wilt like flowers and die. So that's sort of, he's not talking about art in there. He's talking about sort of religion and spirituality. Although, and that could actually be applied to modern American politics. The best lack all conviction and the worst are full of passionate intensity. If you're talking about MAGA type stuff, but. Um, have you never encountered people like that? Let me just ask, have you never encountered that person who was really great or could have been great, had the potential, but they didn't have that extra thing to push
Hmm.
through? Or the reverse of that, the person who you just want to say, look, you've got a good job as an accountant, be satisfied with that, go home to your wife and kids. You don't have the talent. Have you ever dealt with either of those two extremes?
I dealt with both for sure. I actually feel like those are the two most common types of people.
Yes, yes, yes.
And
And that's why I say real genius is so rare. Is that you're going to have 99% more or more of both of those split in half, and then there's that little fraction in the end that are the ones that make it all worthwhile.
yes, but I believe that that's why I wrote the book because when you read the book, on one side, if you're that person who everybody keeps telling you, I see you have so much potential, like the people who hear that most often, those are the people on that side who are really talented, have if they just honed in and locked in and created and shared their work with the world, that on the other side of that effort is massive success. Okay. There's that type of person where I feel like they just need to be aware of their potential and aware of what they're capable of and aware of their abilities and aware that the people that they look up to are no different than them in the sense that all they did, the only difference is that they committed to their craft and were dedicated to pursuing their creative pursuits. Then on the other side, the people who are passionate, but they probably, have like a job in this, but they're not like super talented, things like that. Like I think that those type of people, there's a they need I, I want to use the word like humbling in the sense that art is a humbling craft. Like when I when I decided that I was gonna take a break from trying to create art for money, I realized that creating art has so many other additional benefits than making money. That's just from like the emotional therapeutic aspect, from connecting to the people around me. And one of the things that I tell people who are in that other bucket is this, that a lot of people think that they have to create art to change the world. And I actually plan on making a video about this, but a lot of people think that they have to make art to change the world. And um, and what I say is you can 100% make art to change the world, but your goal as an artist should be to make art to change your world, not the world. Like, how big is your world? Your world is really just your community, your friends, your family. It's the people that you can touch and communicate with, and that's your world. If those people change, then your reality has changed, and that can trickle. You can't even predict how that would trickle generations forward. So what I tell people there is create for the sake of creation and the personal benefits. Share with your community, and have peace, and be okay that that's okay to change your circle. And if anything outside of that, to me, is the icing on the cake,
Well,
essentially.
art is communication at its highest level, be it in a poem, be it in the slant of a camera, in a film or whatever. Let me just hit you with a couple of other things, and then we'll get circle back to YouTube a bit, and then onto the videos. Have you ever heard of an English poet or read an English poet named John Keats?
No, I do know John Keats though. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I read
So
their poem.
So he came up with this term a few hundred years ago called negative capability, and basically what that is his way of describing what great art was. Is that someone who is negatively capable can look at two separate things that no one else would connect together. They can bring them together in their art, connect them, and then when people see that art, they're like, "Oh, that's so obvious." Those two things, you know. So number one, what do you think of that idea of Keats? And secondly, have you ever had those kinds of moments or known people who've had those negatively capable moments where they bring things together that no one else did and boom?
Yeah, for sure. I 100% agree with that. When I look at um, genius at the highest level that I personally define it as, is when a creator or somebody does something where in hindsight it's so obvious, like in hindsight, but nobody did it. And so that's what makes it groundbreaking, is because now from that moment on, everybody is doing something different. So Jackson Pollock, when he was just like, what if art was created as just be art? Like, I'm not painting anything. I'm just painting art. Like what does that even look like? I think, to me, it's that's like, sounds obvious. That's really what a kid does. They're just scribbling on a piece of paper for the sake of doing it. But when an artist says, and a lot of artists during that time, not just Jackson Pollock, but a lot of artists during that time, like when they said, okay, like what if I just created art for the sake of creating art and not trying to paint landscape or paint a portrait or creative whatever. I think it's moments like that that I think are groundbreaking, that that define, to me, just true, just like cultural level creative genius. I think that there's been moments where I felt that, and where I've crafted that feeling in people. Um, and there's and then I've also seen it other times as well. I think that when when I talk to artists, and they ask me, what's the formula to being great? This is what I think the formula is. It's and this is from looking at creative geniuses or creators throughout all of history, prolific creators, the iconic ones. To me, what makes uh, an artist great is when they look at the landscape of art, and they look at the artists that are rebelling. Okay, the artists that are rebelling are usually the artists that are at the top. They're rebelling against everybody. If you can craft something that's rebelling against them, that you can then have like a people at the bottom say like, wow, like no, that's actually kind of a good idea. And then the artists that are rebelling are going against you and saying like, oh no, like that's not, that doesn't work. Over time, you're going to start to build a fan base around this new style or new way of thinking about the craft, and you're essentially creating your own lane in that sense. Yeah.
Well, I think there always has to be quality, though, because people can rebel. There was a famous comic strip artist, Robert Crumb. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he did a lot
Mhm.
of what basically would be considered pornography. His characters were in sexual situations and whatnot. He's quite famous, and he had some great stuff, but a lot of it became. I think he also might have been the guy who did in the 1960s. There was a famous thing of a guy with a thumb up going, "Keep on trucking." It was a
Mm.
famous saying in the 60s and 70s, and the great stuff that an artist can do will endure, but a lot of it is just basically a billboard sign or what do you call it, a bumper sticker on the back of the car. So I think there always has to be quality.
I agree.
Before we take just a little break here, because I don't want to do it all in one. I just want to one other term, and this is a term I came up with, and you mentioned some of this, but not the term. Uh, in a couple of your videos, you talk about the artist being a receiver, and I call this the divine inspiration fallacy. And I think it's to blame for why so many artists get angry and have these rivalries and have these hatreds for other artists. Yes, sometimes there are legitimate qualitative beefs that someone can point out about another artist, but more often, if you say that all the ideas are just floating up there in the ether and anyone can reach up and pluck down, oh, here's a great poem. Oh, here's a great film. Oh, here's a great acting performance, etc. This leads to people thinking that it comes from without, whereas all art, uh, and you also talk about against self-expression, and I think making self-expression the total thing about art is terrible and leads to bad art. But there's nothing that you can do that is not an expression of yourself. If I write a poem about the gangster Al Capone, that says something that Capone interested me, at least in the time that I was writing that poem. Um, but I think when we act as though we're just tuning forks or we're just antenna receiving something from the divine, no, I can tell you any great artist. So, Herman Melville, for example, did not write Moby Dick. He didn't get it from the ether. It comes intimately from the experiences that he had. So that's one of those things that I would disagree with what I took from your videos. What is your take? Do you actually believe that you're just sort of a divine antenna?
No, that's a good question. I think it might help if I just clarify w- my definition of the ether. I think so. If you have let's say you have a photograph, right, and it's 1,000 by 1,000 pixels, right? Okay, so each pixel can be a limited number. Like we know this. There's a limited number of colors that a pixel could be.
Yeah.
It's 1,000 by 1,000 pixels. So there is a finite number of colors, color combinations that all of these pixels in this 1,000 by 1,000 photograph frame can be. Meaning that in any 1,000 by 1,000 frame, to me, the way that I see it is this 1,000 by 1,000 frame of in a finite combination of pixels holds every potential photograph that can be taken. Photos that we've never seen before of other planets, photos of even a photo of the page of Moby Dick that has the text on it. Like this finite number of photographs, to me, it's kind of like it exist. Everything in this photograph already exists, not in the tangible reality. It's just that it's kind of like we're
Well, that
uh
gets back to what you said about
go
Michelangelo's David in your video. That the famous. Now you said it wasn't a metaphor. I always take it as a metaphor because it's just one wrong chop. He could chop off David's nose, and it's not going to be Michelangelo's David anymore. It's going to be a bit of an abomination.
yeah, I think that's a good point. Is in the Michelangelo, like in the David, he said that he removed the marble. Like it was already in the David was already in the marble. The when people
I would argue though David was in Michelangelo and he projected it onto the marble. So see, that's the difference that I would say.
yeah, and I think that and you might even experience this as a creator is very rarely, almost never. I don't even think that this has ever happened to me, but I'm gonna just say rarely because maybe there's some artists that are different or have a different experience, but it's rare that the exact idea that's in my head ends up being the final product.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
I feel like it was the same with David. He probably felt like he was creating one thing and it ended up being another just as beautiful, but the marble played a role into the limitations that he had. When I look at the
Well, creativity isn't a snapshot, it's always a film. If I take 3 months to write a book, I'm going to come up with better ideas than the initial idea 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 13 weeks in.
yeah, the creative process, and so the way that I view it is we're taking the like let's say the finite number photo or a good thing too. Someone actually mentioned this in the comments of one of my videos, and I thought it was super beautiful. Uh, they're a photographer. They'll snap a photo, and people are like, "Man, like, how did you get that?" And they'll say, "Like, no, like we're all here. The photo was right there. I just snapped it. It's
But see,
all
that's almost the negative capability because a great photographer can see, let's say, two people walking this way, and they know in 3 seconds that it's going to be a great photograph. They get it out, boom, and it's that ability. I would say if you want to see about a really great photographer, there's a famous documentary that came out about a decade ago about a woman named Vivian Maier who died in obscurity. Vivian Maier, Maier, and now her photographs, which were saved, which were being auctioned off, would have been lost forever. She's got 10,000 photographs or more, and people are now making money off of her long after she's dead. But her stuff, she's one of the best street photographers ever, and you can
yeah,
just see that there's a famous one of her photos where she's on a ferry and she's looking down at a man and a woman, and there are birds flying right around them, and something's about to happen. But she was wise enough to take the photograph right before whatever was going to happen was going to happen. And to me that's what a photographer who's great does, or any great artist. They have that ability to see just a little bit beyond and see what's coming.
hmm yeah, and I definitely agree with that in many ways for sure. And so I feel like um, so I think there's that when I say like the ether in terms of like the finite whatever levels of things to create, like that's just like an example like the photography thing, but I also think of it as our perceptions are a collection of our experiences in our environment and the things that have subconsciously influenced us that got us to a certain point to of creating uh, from the initial part of the creative process down to the end. I think that our discussion about the creative process, where you start writing a book and then over time, like you gain new insights from conversations and you gain new insights from research and you gain new insights from this and that and that. To me, I feel like these insights that you're getting, these conversations that you're having, I feel like they're coming from outside of you and it's being filtered through your perception. And a lot of it is subconscious. A lot of people attribute it to also conscious as well. So it's a blend of the two. And then it's put back into the work. And so I feel like a lot of times that's why the initial idea is never the same as the end, because it's never if it was a snap of your fingers, if you could think of the David, snap your fingers, and then David is there, then it'll be the first thought that you had.
Right.
But because it's a creative process, the creative process shows that along the way you're constantly being influenced. That's why you can't stick with that original idea. um, to me, the creative process is evidence that inspiration and and external influence is attributed uh, to creativity.
So let me just backtrack for a minute. I do want to talk a little bit. Talking about art was so energizing that I didn't want to go totally without talking about a little bit about the business aspect of it. So let me talk about your website and YouTube channel. Is Do you have a day job, or is this are you trying to monetize both of them at this point?
So my day job is Sparkith. It's the online art education platform for kids and teens. So that I started. So I've been doing that for 10 years, and so that's what I do. And then I also have other businesses that revolve around creativity, but don't really share much on the YouTube. I think is probably the most, what I feel like is the most purposeful uh, work that I do. Is to influence creators to bring their ideas to life.
So you have, from if I'm counting correctly, 15 big longer videos that are 10 minutes or so longer, and then you have a lot of short videos too. Um, that and you've been doing it for how long? How many years? 3, 4 years now?
Okay, so YouTube, I actually started it about 3 months ago.
Oh, okay. So
So the channel has been around
okay.
for years because I just converted it. I had 100 subscribers
Mhm.
3 months ago. It took me 2 months to go from 100 to 400, and then it took me about a month after that to go from 400 to, I think it's at like 26,000 right now.
Yeah. So I know one of the things is so you only have a small amount. Do you worry about maybe repeating yourself? The reason I say this is I've seen a lot of YouTube people that when they have only a few hundred people, like I probably in a year this video might get 300 views, of if I'm lucky 500, 600, and I don't do it for the money. But a lot of people, they hyper focus on things. I'll give you two examples. One woman I interviewed, a real sweetheart. She was doing genealogical research. She a mixture of stuff: Creole, Black, Indian, American Indian, not Indian Indian. And right after I interviewed her, her YouTube site took off. But what I noticed is about 6 months to a year later, she was repeating a lot of the videos. How do you do this? How do you do that? And another gal that I used to follow, but I just found her videos getting repetitive, was this woman who lives up in the Arctic
Mm.
Ocean in Svalbard, and she started doing videos about what's it like to go to the bathroom in minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's like I don't find that particularly interesting. And
Yeah.
I remember on one of her videos that why don't you do a bit more about the history of the islands, because there's like a Russian mining settlement up there, and things like that. And she was like, no, that doesn't interest me. And it became more solipsistic, just about her daily life, which is only gonna go so far. Do you have a vision for the videos and the YouTube channel, so that you're not writing about, oh, this is how when I'm finished painting I clean my paintbrushes, and
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. I do. I want to touch on, right now it's very much, you could kind of categorize it as creative philosophy in a way, like in many ways, creative motivation, inspiration. I think that when I have as a, let me backtrack. So I have topics mapped out for, I would say, if I don't even have 15 videos right now, for years. I have topics mapped out, and it spans uh, not just the philosophy, but I plan on digging into specific creators, creative processes, going doing deep dives on specific creators. I plan on also helping creators understand how to make money off of their art and off of their creativity in a lot of ways. I plan on, I, in a nutshell, I plan on just motivating, empowering, helping people, educating, and not just on one specific craft, but kind of expanding creativity outside of the lens of just, the arts, dance, music, and just showing people that they're all connected, in the arts. And then lastly, of course, technology. As I'm very passionate about technology as well. Like that's a glimmer of my childhood and growing up. And I think that right now this is very, I don't know, uncertain times when it comes to technology and creativity. And so I want to pose certain ideas around that I think can, one, bring peace to a lot of creators, two, bring clarity to a lot of creators, and three, give them actionable steps to move forward.
Before we get back to the more philosophical and artistic stuff, let me just ask a technical question. Have you ever had any videos taken down, or have you had any copyright claims against you and stuff? Because I know early on I've done 450. This might be the 450th, 449 interview. My seventh or eighth video, I was doing a show about public domain films, and one of the goddamn public domain films, some asshole in Germany claimed that he had the copyright in Germany, and I got a copyright strike, and I was like, no more. I'm just doing talks with people. Have you ever had that, and have you ever had your balls busted by YouTube over nonsense?
No, I haven't. I've, had pages taken down on other social media platforms. I've grown an Instagram page in a totally different niche to reaching 65 million people a month.
Hmm.
Was taken down by Instagram.
Oh my word! What can you just say, briefly what that was about?
Yeah, that was in the, actually in the dog niche. It was spreading joy around dogs.
Huh?
People, yeah, it was in the dog niche. Not about creativity, uh, so I did have that. I did have that experience, and it's the reason why I'm growing my YouTube channel, but also growing my email subscriber list as well in the process, so that I could actually own having access to my audience. I don't have to rely solely on an external platform. So my email list is growing in tangent with my YouTube channel. I haven't had any, copyright strikes as of yet. My proposal video did have some music in it, but yeah, that's okay. Uh, Ever since then, though, pretty much I just prioritize just me sitting down in front of the camera and talking. And I think that it's going to stay like that for a good minute until I hit a certain amount of subscribers, and I'm going to branch off and experiment a little bit more.
So let's get back then to talking a little bit about art and some of the things in specific videos. Before we do that, just overall, I noticed that you often use the term truth in regard to art, whereas I would use the term reality, and I think they are two separate things. To me, reality is a thing that undergirds everything. We can say Dan and Dwayne are talking via Teams on this date at this time and making this video that you're watching 17 years after it was made or something. That to me is the underlying reality. But truth, to me, truth is always a bit more fungible. It's the classic he said, she said. You're out on a date with a girl or a guy, if whatnot, and you know, you get into some kind of an argument, and it becomes, well, you started the argument. No, you started the argument, and to a certain degree, both people can be right. And to me, that's the difference. Reality doesn't give a damn about what us observers think, whereas truth is a little bit more nuanced. So to me, art is always trying to break the ice to get to a central reality and have the observer, the audience, see what the artist presumably can see. Sometimes not. Sometimes the art goes beyond the artist, but generally speaking, whereas truth, as I said, is more black, is more gray. What is your take on the difference between truth and reality vis-a-vis art?
Yeah, no, this I think was probably one of the questions that really made me think because you emailed this question as well. So, and I've been pondering on it ever since, and because I think that it's a very important question because a lot of artists feel the way that in the way in of the videos that I said, and I love the counter perspective. So the way I see it is this: when the definition of truth is just like this, the state of being true. But what's interesting is the definition of being true was, I think it was something like being in accordance with fact or reality. And when I saw that, I was like, wow, like there's almost a connection here that Dan probably like overlooked in the sense of this. I think that, like, have you ever been in love?
Well, I'm married for 25 years, so yeah, my wife would have my head if I didn't say yes.
Okay, got you. But she wasn't your first relationship though,
No.
right? You've liked other people, you know. But there's something, but there's a reason why why you felt that you can look at your wife one day and you say, "Wow, this is true love." I feel like to me, when I think about art and truth, I don't think about a calculator and you're getting a specific answer. What I think about is a person's experiences being something that being one of the only things in life that they could look at and say, in, like you're saying, reality, in my reality, these feelings are, dare I say, just real. They're real to me. These feelings are real to me, and because they're real to me, they're my truth. It's very difficult for people, like most people have beliefs versus truths because beliefs are things that they were told externally, and they just they abide by those beliefs. It's very rare that you actually have things that you can say are your personal truth. Someone can look at you and your wife's love story and say, that's not true love. But to you, you know it. It's true to you. And in that sense, you can create through that lens and put out something through your art that shows that this is your love. Someone can watch my proposal video or and say like, like that's superficial love, but like no, to me and my wife, that is our relationship is true love. Our love story, our journey, our feelings, our interactions, the way we feel about each other, the music that we hear that transports me out of this reality and into this space where all I can do is just see her face or a smell that reminds me of her. Like it's these that are dictating my personal truth, and all I'm doing is sharing my personal truth through my art. Not to say that that is an objective truth, but to say that that is my truth.
Well, I just you said you were been married for 2 years. You said earlier. Oh,
Only married for one.
okay.
Only married for one.
So,
So
but I'll assume you dated for a while,
yeah,
a
yeah,
few
yeah.
years or whatnot.
I've known her since I was a kid, for as long as I can remember.
Okay,
You know.
so then you have more of an established relationship, and yes, I think you're going to have those moments. I had those moments with my wife and with a few other women beforehand, where you think, oh, and you think the angels are singing and whatnot, but and this is aside from art, uh, real love, true love, deep love, whatever you want to call it, it it's at its strongest when the relationship seems to be fraying, or there's something coming to loggerheads with you want to do this, your wife says
100%
that, um, and this doesn't make for good Hollywood movies, but it makes for good relationships. Is that you persevere. Too often people give up, and I'm not saying people should get divorced if you were an abusive asshole and your wife said fuck this, I'm out of here, or you found her in bed with your best friend, you say fuck that, I'm out of here, but generally speaking, those are things that make that they're in these romantic comedies and these tearjerker kind of films. Um, so to me, uh, when people talk about real love, that's something that isn't glamorous, it isn't sexy, but it's a deep bond, and the bond gets stronger
I
over time.
I agree. Yeah, and when me and my wife got married, our we didn't do our vows publicly. We did them in private. I think I touched
Yeah, I
on this
saw
one in
that.
the videos, but
Yeah.
I wrote I combined a book of poems. I combined all the poetry I wrote about our relationship over the last, 4 or 5 years into one book and gifted it to her. And in that book, you would see it showcased the ups and the downs. It like I think that maybe it won't be in a Hollywood film the low points, but I think that all aspects of love make for great art. Um, yeah, that's essentially how I feel.
So let me just talk about a few of your videos and their main points, and just go back and forth a little on them. You have a video talking about imposter syndrome, and I would argue that you don't even have to be a great artist. You just have to be a good artist with your feet grounded to know that's not so. To me, the people who have that imposter syndrome are generally not particularly good artists who have gotten some fame or made some money, and essentially they know it. A good example to me is Elon Musk. He's not an artist, but this is a guy who was born literally. He was a fetus that was worth more than you and I combined. He didn't have to work his whole life. He could sit around, buy companies, take credit for other people's things, and if he has that imposter syndrome, yeah, there's a reason because he is an imposter. But I think artists who know that they produce something of value, I don't think they really have that. And if they do, it's just the fleeting. It's a fleeting insecurity. I wouldn't make it a syndrome, but everyone has some insecurity. Oh, she's too beautiful for me. Oh, I come from the wrong neighborhood. Oh, I don't have the right religion, skin color, belief system, whatever it might be. But someone who's really grounded, I don't think really has that. Do you think it's that big of a problem in art that you did a video about it?
Oh yeah, no, totally. I think I see it. You know how we talked about there's the two types of creators that you see most often, and one of them are the people with tons of potential, but
Mm.
they don't tap into it. I think a lot of times I see it in people like that, where uh, you clearly have the talent and the skills, but when they're in the position to put themselves out there, that hesitation comes from all those voices in their head telling them that they're not good enough. And that's why I made that video, is because when you it's almost like a self-awareness thing. The moment that you realize that those voices in your head aren't real, they're actually honestly telling you that because you probably have the potential, or you're approaching a new phase of life, or you're breaking free from your comfort zone and entering a new space that requires you to grow. Then you start to realize that, okay, like I can muster up the confidence to do so. To me, confidence is on the other side of evidence that you have overcome a lot of those imposter syndrome moments. And I think that what you're talking about is confidence. And even when I looked at confidence in a lot of creators who have achieved massive success, they still have moments of feeling like they're in imposter syndrome, and that they don't deserve to be in the position that they're even in. And so,
Now, let me just ask you: when you say success, and I was going to bring this up earlier, what are you defining as success? Name value or monetary value? Because
yeah,
if they're basing their sense of self worth upon monetary value, well, that's the problem. It's not the imposter syndrome. It's basing success on the wrong thing.
I think the way I kind of see it is in this scenario, what I'm defining as success is anything that's tied into being prolific. So That could be monetary. That could be your name widely known. Um, I feel like some people create for the sake of creation, and then their creations blow up massively, unexpectedly. They were creating for, like, for example, if my book ever becomes like a massive success, I literally made that book for my immediate circle. That book has been out since April of 2024. I only shared it with family and friends. I had no, further intention of sharing it beyond that. Recently, it's been getting, a lot of sales because of the YouTube channel. But I feel like that would be one thing where it's just like I simply just wanted to explore creativity and write a book. Check it off my bucket list. So I think that there's aspects like that about creativity where you're creating for one reason and it achieves like that prolific success that's honestly unintended sometimes.
So you also did a video about why some art dies. Can you just briefly summarize what you were saying in that video?
Yeah, so is that the one about iconic art?
Yeah, yeah. The secret
Uh,
code.
yeah, yeah. So a mirror mapping the message is kind of like what I noticed in a lot of iconic art. Not all of them, but enough to where if somebody wanted some sort of formulaic way of creating iconic art, you want to create a mirror, so something where people can see themselves inside your art, a map, so you take them along a journey through whatever your craft is, and a message that's usually powerful enough that it sits with them for a long time and influences their way of thinking or perceiving the world over time.
You also did a video about abandoned projects. I'm trying to read my own notes here. I shouldn't have used red ink. I can barely read it. What was that about the abandoned projects video?
Oh yeah, that one is also another thing that I hear about creators all the time. Even if you just dig through my comments, you will see that a lot of the videos, they're not necessarily motivating people to start making art. They're motivating people to pick back up on the projects that they were working on. I think that a lot of times in the creative process, a lot of creators abandon their work mainly through the lens of perfectionism. And they want their art to be perfect before they release it instead of being done. And so a lot of that book, I mean, a lot of that video, I did touch a little bit on perfectionism, but mainly on the importance of, you know, finishing your art and that the fact that your art needs you.
You did a video also about the artist sounding crazy. Did you worry any about feeding the cliche? Because I've been involved in the art scene since I was 18, 19, in various places I've lived and also online. And this is probably one of the most frustrating things is that feeding this cliche that people who are not involved in the arts are they wave the hand and say, oh, yeah, yeah, she's a nut job. She, always right talking about her bodily functions or whatever her art might be. Um, uh, did you when you did that video? Were you trying to debunk it or trying to feed into the cliche of crazy artists?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that the reason I made that video was the most empowering thing anyone can ever do is to take back their power. If you watch that video, and you could even see it in some of the comments, if you're not an artist, then you almost take offense to that video because it shows that artists are living, it reframes the crazy artist to like, no, like we're living in a world that's beautiful. Like we see things and experience things that the average person misses. And it's not that we're crazy. You simply just don't understand this. And that's why I ended the video where I was like, if you watch this and it doesn't make sense to you, more power to you. It wasn't supposed to. This video is for artists.
Let me just, before we wrap up, maybe another 10, 15 minutes if you have the time. I just want to talk about a few other things, some that was touched upon in some of the videos and other such things. One of the cliches that people do talk about art, and I don't think I think I watched, you got what, 15 videos? I think I watched 9 of them, or 10 perhaps. So I don't have a total grasp on your claims in the videos, but people will talk about art and truth and beauty, and we've touched on the truth thing before, but I would say both of those ideas, that art is truth or art is beauty, are both false, because you can have beauty and you can have truth within art, but they are not necessary. And what that does is it means that the deceptive things, the ugly things, don't have any value in the world. And to me, if you're an artist, you're going to be taking everything into account. If I'm writing, for example, a few days ago I finished a book. It's about this ex-slave who is moving north, and he has some adventures, but it's mostly sort of a transcendental, I call it cowboy transcendentalism. It's called Exodus. I don't know if you know about the Exodusters who moved up from the South after after the Civil War rather. But anyway, and as I was writing that in my mind, as I'm going through it, there's a lot of ugly thoughts that the main character has. Ugly thoughts about other people, ugly thoughts about himself. And they are just as valid and interesting to me as the more standard moments where maybe he's looking off a mountain into the beauty of the valley or whatnot. What is your take on ugliness and beauty in art?
Yeah, I think that beauty, I hate this quote, but beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Like
Mm-hmm.
it truly is. What you kind of determine as ugly in art, or something that's grungy or repulsive, someone could experience that and say like, "Wow, like I feel seen, I feel heard. Like that's beautiful. That's inspiring. That's moving." I think that art, is created through the lens. Like most people don't even release their art unless they personally feel like it's beautiful. Like most people don't, and even if they do, like even if they do, regardless, once it's out there, the way that I view art is the way that I view like kids. It's like you raise a kid and then you just let them out into the world, like, and they will experience the world, you know, part of it partially through the nurture aspect and the nature aspect, but they're going to end up experiencing the world and interacting with the world in ways that you have no control over. And so I could create something that's super beautiful. And a good example of this is in the art show. There's a piece that's a minimalism piece. It was about the simplicity of the beauty of my wife. And so I drew her in like contour line drawing, red paint. And that piece is the one that I guess it's because it's her face. Like it's because it's her and it's big and bold. It's a 6 foot canvas. She's just like, I don't know, like that's my least favorite one. Like that's my least favorite one. But when people see the art in person, that's usually their most favorite one. And so I feel like there's that's a good example of there's a beauty through one lens and repulsiveness through another lens, simply because of your individual life experiences interacting with this work of art.
But okay, but you would grant that in life there are things that are ugly. There are things that are nasty. And I'm going somewhere with it. But so would you grant that at least?
For for me personally, yes, but I will never say that ugly. is a fact, I would say that ugly is still my perspective. Like, yeah.
But then beauty is as well. That would have to be
Yes,
too.
yes, yes.
Because
Ugliness
it
and
seems to me,
beauty.
if you try to deny ugliness as a state in existence, that's sort of like arguing with a religious person. If I'm an atheist and I say, well, prove to me God, and the religious person, pats you on the head and says, well, God loves you anyway.
Mhm.
It seems to me when you if you don't appreciate the ugliness, not through the lens of beauty, other than the fact that there has to be an opposing force to beauty, uh, taking the ugliness for what it is in and of itself a good thing. I sent you that link to a video I did 25 years ago where I wrote a sonnet on this mass murderer, Ed Gein.
Yeah, I saw some of it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
and this was the guy who, the movie Psycho, the Texas Chainsaw
Hmm.
Massacre, he was the inspiration for both of them. This guy, his brain was ugly. I mean, this guy he was warped, sick, whatever. Um, but that doesn't mean that there isn't value in putting his tale into a work of art. Now, the sonnet might be beautiful in some ways, but there's the essential ugliness that brought that out, that spoke to me, that said, oh, I'm going to write about this individual. And so to me, it seems that when you try to couch ugliness just in contrast to beauty, what you're doing is a disservice to the ugly things. If you were to out hiking with your brother and a cougar came and jumped on your brother and ripped him to shreds or whatnot, it would be very difficult to find anything positive or beautiful in that situation, I would think. But if I read that story about Dwayne Walker's brother mauled to death by a cougar, I might think, oh, there was that time I knew someone who got hit by a car, and I remember the broken body, and I can put the your dead brother and the person who was run over together, and maybe I can make something beautiful out. Do you see where I'm going with that? As far as
Yeah,
ugliness
yeah.
has to stand on its own in a sense.
I think that one of the things, and it's something that probably should have mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, but I did create one video about it, and it's on binary thinking,
Yeah.
like the dangers of binary thinking, this or that, and that creativity does lie in the in between, in the spectrum of possibilities between this and that, and the combination of. I think that I like to approach most. I approach most things through that lens, and a lot of even the points that you mentioned in in this conversation, however long we've been talking, over an hour long, I will say that I agree with every single one of your points, and I see the perspective in all of them. And even if I have a different perspective, I don't solely believe that mine are true or that the facts or whatever. It's just we're here exchanging ideas, and some people are gonna watch them and pull some from me, pull some from you. Some people are gonna watch and completely disagree with everything that we said. But all I will say is this: everything, a beautiful part of creative thinking and creativity is that all of it has value and is you hate this word, but it's true in a sense. It's true in a sense. It's our truth. And so when I look at beauty and ugliness, I do look at it more of like the spectrum and the combination of. I think that kind of like how you flipped the cougar situation into something that can have beauty, I can honestly do that for anything. Like we can play that thought experiment out for anything that anybody considers to be beauty, anything that anybody considers to be ugly. And I think that ability just shows that to me it is all about perspective and how people are perceiving it.
Let me ask about this art cliche, and it's one that's only come up in the last 25 or 30 years. It wasn't one that was too bruited when I was your age, but a lot of people will say, well, great art doesn't give answers, it just asks questions. And I'm like, no, no, no. You can read any major biography of any great artist. To use Moby Dick and Herman Melville. Herman Melville I mean, when his book got trashed, and it's a great book. I don't know if you've ever read it, but it's a great, great book. But when his book got trashed, he was devastated by it, and and the reason I say that is because it is so rich philosophically deep. uh, there are answers there. The fault, if you don't get the answers, is with the reader, not with him. And I think when people say things like it's about asking questions, that's sort of them waving a white flag and saying, "Yeah, it has to be because I don't really understand it." What have you ever heard that cliche? Do you agree with it, and so
Oh,
forth?
I heard that cliche for sure, and I'm on your side with this one. Like, like I said, a mirror mapping a message, and a message to me, it can be a question. Like, let me not take that away from their perspective. It can be solely a question and posing a question that people carry with them and causes them to question their own assumptions. But I believe that it can also be uh, a core message or multiple messages, and it can also be a mix of both. So, for example, like the movie The Matrix poses the question like, are we in a simulation? But then it also gives you like a lot of answers in how maybe like parallels of the system in the Matrix could be parallels to the current societal structure and things like that. So I feel like it, it can pose questions, but for people to say that it's only questions and offers no answers, I feel like is very is looking at it in a very small way.
Let me turn to a more practical question. What are your views on academia, specifically things like MFA writing classes? To me, I think they are ripoffs by and large. I remember I've known a number of people, but I'll give an example of this one young woman that I knew who was this Creole gal from Louisiana, and she had contacted me maybe 15, 17 years ago, and showing me her poems and stuff, and I gave feedback and this and that, and but she didn't, for some reason, just uh, talking to me or some of the people that were fans of my website uh, was not enough, and so she went to a writing program. I forget, some university in Louisiana, and years later, she ended up like $60,000 to $70,000 in debt, and I was like, what, you could have gotten that stuff from me for free. I offered it to you, but she felt she needed the validation, and you know the college debt probably is still dogging her. Uh, what is your take on academia? I'm not saying you can't teach someone uh, basic or general principles about art, but you're never going to make an Emily Dickinson out of someone who doesn't have it. This girl had a little bit of talent, but what is your take on that situation?
Yeah, I think that the education system in general is extremely deeply flawed, and especially if there's a creator who is seeking improving in their craft. I think that unfortunately, a lot of people are looking for what they think they're looking for is academia, but in reality, they're looking for an apprenticeship or they're looking for a mentor. And I think that the lack of resources to have access to things like that, I think is one of the reasons why a lot of young kids. I'm assuming she was young,
At the time, yeah.
yeah. I think especially when you have to understand, you go from a kid and then you're in elementary school and then you're in middle school and then you're in high school, and throughout that entire time they're saying you need to go to college, you need to go to college, college is the right step, college is the next step, and all you want to do is create. And so there, and then you hear of this thing called an art school, which is sometimes costs more than your typical college. And so they honestly are influenced into believing that that's the only path, when there's multiple paths. Like I said, like the apprenticeship, mentorship. What I tell people is simply create. If you just create more and create consistently, and always stay curious and study, you have resources on the internet, you have things like that, you can really hone in and master your craft. And a lot of people say that, oh, you go to these schools for the network, you go for the connections, you go for the opportunities that come after it. But unfortunately, a lot of those opportunities are non-existent or are only for a select few of the best who've went through those programs. And so and I'm talking about art school, but this is honestly school in general for a lot of subjects outside of the creative arts.
So let me ask a final question, and then we'll wrap up. I myself am not religious. I don't know whether you are or not, but a lot of people oftentimes talk about the creation of art in very similar terms that they talk to about God in divine sense. Um, uh, if you don't believe in a God, any God, uh, does art then become more important to you if you have the talent? In other words, uh, uh, is is religious fervor something that can possibly detract from art, or are they two separate domains in your mind, or what?
I think they're equally as empowering. For someone to say that, oh, I'm channeling this God entity through me to create. I'm mirroring the creator to create, um, tapping into the source. You hear all those things. That's, I feel like, very empowering to feel that connected to a higher power. Then on the flip side, I think there's something deeply empowering in saying that I myself have honed in on this craft long enough to create something that's powerful, that's influential, that's deeply and me, and that can move people. And so I think that um, it's the dangerous part, or I feel like is where people who are more when people have the imposter syndrome and the voices in their head telling them that they're not enough. And when they're telling them that they're not enough, regardless if you believe in God or not, if you're not enough, then you can't you feel disconnected from the source. Then if you're not enough, you feel disconnected from yourself. And so I think the dangerous part is the negative voices in your head telling you that you're not good enough, and not the whether you believe in God or not.
Finally, is there anything you'd like to add that I missed in our conversation?
Oh, no, not really. I think you covered a lot. You covered more than I could ever imagine. I think this was a wonderful interview and great conversation. And I hope this isn't the last time that we talk. Like, I really like your mind. I know you don't like people throwing around the word genius, but from this short conversation I had, I feel like you definitely tapped into some sort of personal genius. You're well researched, well studied. I don't know how old you are or how long you've
60.
been. Oh wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. How long have you been um, into this topic, or deeply passionate about creativity or the
When I tried
arts?
to woo a girl when I was 18 with poems and I failed.
Hmm. Always starts with the girl. That's
Well, no,
hilarious.
I definitely want to keep in touch. And uh, uh, just so you know, the book that I finished recently, I've done my longest book is 2.5 million words almost, but this book is
Wow.
only 80,000. So I will send you that one if you don't mind.
Oh, I
I'm
would love to
interested in
see
your
that.
opinion. But I will link to both the website, your website, World of Creatives, as well as the YouTube channel. Anyone who's watched this who wants to know more about Dwayne or his opinions, or just want to watch him talk about art, can go there. So thank you. It's a little over an hour and a half. It went longer than I thought, but that's really cool. So thanks again, Dwayne.
All right, thank you.